I mean, I've always thought of the Gleasons and the AE map as just kind of like more of like a blueprint. I mean, I know that the way I spoke about it, I never said like, oh, this is what the Earth is. In fact, I often pointed out that, I mean, Australia seems distorted and all the other things with it, but it's just like as a general layout or as like kind of a starting point to try to, start to think about the sun movement and all of that. I mean, that's kind of the way I always thought of it. It's kind of just like as like a base kind of outline or just like a blueprint to kind of begin to try to see that, see it from that type of a layout.
I agree with that in the sense. I agree with that in the sense that, like, even if you say that things look distorted on the map, you're saying it looks distorted from the image that the globe gave you originally. So you can't know what it is at all.
Wouldn't it be?
It was good to help visualize. Oh, go ahead. Somebody trying to get in?
No, I just asked. Wouldn't it be easy to make a map? An actual representation
of the whole world?
Absolutely.
Do one in my neighborhood.
It would be easy to certainly leave stuff off of a map and slightly rearrange places on the map. Yeah.
Well, not if you know the distances between 2 points. It should be easy on a flat surface to draw out a map.
Oh, your question was, would it be easy to make a map?
Of the
Hell
Earth,
no.
as we see it, and as we can see it
Distances
now.
aren't as easy as you think to get.
Did you know? Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I thought you were done. Good.
I'm just saying distances aren't as easy as you think over these long ranges. Like, if you had a completely level surface from A to B, I could get you a distance, but other than that, like it's not as easy as people think it is.
Well, I understand going over mountains and so forth, you're going to run into some difficulties if you're doing the surveying from the ground, but you can do the surveying from both the air and the ground. And get a reasonably accurate distance between 2 points. And once you have 3 points or 3 different towns, 3 different points along a coastline, and eventually you're going to have an accurate coastline. Once you have an accurate coastline, you've taken care of the entire continent.
Okay, so no, you don't get. It's not as simple as taking 3 points along a coastline to accurately map out a coastline. And when it comes to nautical miles, it's extremely difficult to establish and verify distance. So
okay,
over water,
how would it not be on a coastline since it's at sea level? Just out of curiosity, answer that question. You said it's difficult, but you're dealing with 3 points along a sea level plane, a flat plane at sea level.
How does that allow you to intricately map out a coastline?
If everything, okay, and the points that I'm talking about are obviously close together because the closer you have the measuring points, the more accurate your curves of your outline of your coastline are going to be mapped. And once you've mapped the entire coastline, the interior doesn't matter because all you're caring about right now is just getting the outline of the continents. And once you have the outline of the continents, you should be able to figure out their position relative to the other continents on a flat Earth. They're not moving. They're not going anywhere. And therefore, you'll get an accurate size of each of the continents on your map, and you can demonstrate how the Earth looks.
All right. So he's let you go your full time twice, but you interrupted him. So can we hear his full response without interruption, please?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
So notice how he quickly changed and moved the goalpost to how easy it was to do it with just 3 points. You can map out a coastline, and that turned into, well, it would have to be really close together to get a little portion of, like little baby portion of it, effectively. And then we're talking about immense coastlines all over the world. So no, it wouldn't be super easy. And the way that the world map was actually created, it took hundreds of years and billions of today's dollars. It took completely unrestricted access to travel in all areas, all over the place. It took immense amount of teams coordinating and collaborating. And then they brought all their evidence and all of their cartography efforts and measurement efforts. They brought it all back to the queen. And then the queen kept all that information. Eventually, we were given a quote unquote world map. It wasn't easy at all. And of course, when you start getting into actual directions and the magnetic declinations, it became extremely difficult to the point that people were dying, ships were crashing, people were losing billions of dollars in precious metals consistently. The process of building this world map that we currently have was the exact opposite of pretty easy.
Well, Witsit, that's an interesting story you bring up, but that's all in the past. Mapping recently, since the 1950s, has been done on every coastline and every continent, and they have a very good idea exactly how long the coastlines are, and the coastlines are changing through erosion and so forth. But the whole point is all that mapping was done in the 20th century. It didn't cost billions of dollars. It only cost in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was a cooperation of all the countries in the world. Now, if you want to go down that road of the Queen and that mapping, when they sent ships out to map the North America when they first discovered it, that's kind of irrelevant because we now have modern technology and even people living on the continents going down to the coast and surveying the coast to make sure everything is exactly where it's supposed to be. So how is it not easy to make a flat map?
Have you ever heard?
Okay.
Go ahead, Witsit. Go ahead.
It's so funny, dude. So, first of all, dude, this is what actually happened. It took all that time. You're saying that if the map we were given isn't right, how easy would it be for us to come just make it? And then when I point out that the process is extremely difficult and it took hundreds of years and tons of resources and tons of freedom of accessibility and travel, you then just randomly shifted over to, oh, well, it's already been done. You should be able to use what's already been done, which is the entire thing that's being contended. So, like, this is pretty simple, man. When it comes to mapping out the distances between continents, you're going to get into the ocean, and that's very difficult to map out. When it gets into truly mapping out the continents and then the way that they're laid out in relation to each other, that is extremely difficult. If you were to try to undertake that task right now without just taking for granted what they have given us, it would be extremely daunting task. Even if you were to give the United States government that task right now and they had to start over from scratch, it would take many, many, many years and billions of dollars. Okay. And so
But
this
Witsit,
idea that just flat earthers on the internet should have been able to do it in 10 years, they should have mapped the entire world, is ridiculously disingenuous.
Well, Witsit, let me ask you this. You're talking about using sail ships from the past. I'm talking about using modern steamers, modern, diesel-powered ships and so forth, all that can do the measuring a lot faster in a lot better weather conditions. Even, there's no way you could tell me that this is going to be a horrendously hard project to do because you keep referring to the time when we did it with sail ships and not the time when we did it with modern schooners that we have today. We could easily do this kind of measurement. And I think you're avoiding, or maybe you're just afraid of making a map. And that would be the first step. Make a great map.
Okay, so once again, you're just not really addressing my point and interacting with it in good faith. So for flat earthers to go make a world map is a ridiculously disingenuous request.
I didn't say flat earthers.
It doesn't matter that we have a steamboat now. Okay, the world is huge. I just flew over a large chunk of it. It's incredibly big. The ocean's incredibly big. To try to even accurately determine distance over the ocean, it's well known to effectively be impossible to truly accurately determine nautical miles. Okay. And so if we're going to actually if we've been lied to about the nature of the earth and we've been given a specific world map, and then flat earthers are like, okay, let's figure out the real map, which is the task on the table. And if we're not just going to take for granted the information that they gave us, which is the very deception that we're discussing, then it would take tons of time, tons of resources. You would have to also have the freedom to do that. You would have to be able to travel where you need to, fly where you need to. Now, yeah, with modern technology, you could do it much quicker. You could actually implement things like LiDAR. You could put fleets of different types of like drones out. Ideally, you'd be able to do it in many different ways. You would have to have the freedom to do all of those things, which we don't. You'd have to have the resources to do all those things. And when you get into actually determining the relative layout of the land, when you get further out the south and further into the ocean, then the directions themselves become a huge like deterrence to the goal, right? Because you need to have to know magnetic declination corrections, exactly where you are. How are we determine the magnetic declination corrections? Yes, to know the cardinal directions. To know the cardinal directions, which is going to be needed to properly lay continents out in relation to each other on a map, you're going to need to know the proper magnetic declination recordings,
Okay.
and
First,
that task
can I
alone
address
would
that?
be immense. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's say we map out all of South America. I lived down there for the last 8 years, and I literally have seen most of South America. It's a very big place. And basically, going from the southern tip of Chile all the way up to the northern part of South America, it's all ocean. So it's very easy to use the land itself to do the measurements just along the coastline and make the measurement of the actual size of the continent. Now, in relationship to where it is in North America, again, you continue up through Central America and measure all of North America, and it's going to get real difficult up around Canada where all the islands are, but you should be able to easily be able to measure all of that too. Now, how do you get that relationship between there and Europe? The distance between Europe and the United States is well known. The distance between, say, Alaska and Russia is definitely well known. You can see it. So you know that those distances are there. You can lay out the continents, those three continents right there, Europe, Asia, and of course, North and South America, 4 continents, all easily onto a map. The problem lies into maybe a continent like Australia. Africa is easy. It's right below Europe. No, I don't believe you where you have to sit there and use compasses and magnetic declination. You can simply measure it, knowing the distances between them, and then lay the continents out correctly on your.
Lay the continents out correctly. How? It's based on direction, and the north is not even really a problem, even with like this kind of flat Earth map. Now, here's the actual history of what happened. Again, there were royal families and world governments. They spent a ton of time, resources, and people,
They
to
needed
map
to.
out. Yeah, you would still need to.
No,
Now,
you don't,
obviously,
because everybody's done navigation already between the continents already. There's ships navigating back and forth. That's not the problem. If you want to know how to find north
hey,
without a compass, it's very
why are you interrupting me?
because you're going to give me a history lesson about something that's totally off topic, and it's not what we're talking about. I'm asking you how to
Oh,
make a map today, not how to make a
oh.
map back then. I already know how they made the map back
Well,
then.
if you didn't interrupt me, you would have heard my point, and then you would have realized that your little spill right there is completely irrelevant and non sequitur to my point.
Could I check in?
So, no. So you see the guy interrupts me and has to be muted, and you think, oh, this is my cue to now not let Austin finish. So what happened was they spent all these resources, all this time to map out the Earth, and they were highly secretive with it. They kept the information to themselves. For example, just like let's use Captain Cook for an example. Captain Cook goes to Antarctica, takes all these measurements, all these like bearing readings, these documents the whole thing, brings it to the royal family, to the queen, and she keeps it. They keep it secret for 6 years, send him back on another one. He ends up never coming back, and they don't release it, quote unquote, until 6 years. 6 years, you could do all kinds of things. You could take out what you wanted to, leave what you wanted to, change what you wanted. And there was actually a decree given by the king that anyone that was going to publish a world map had to adhere to the longitude and latitude system that had been formulated. Okay, that is a major source of deception. So when you come into like, oh, everyone's navigated already. Yeah, they've navigated within that construct, within that very limitation that the king gave a decree forcing people to remain within. They navigate based on that assumption. And so that doesn't help us at all. And that's an important part. And any glober that wants to be honest in this conversation, they would need to acknowledge this idea like, well, flat earthers don't even have a map. You don't have a map. You were given a map. You didn't do anything. You were given something, you believe it, and it took a lot of resources to even give you what you have. It's very disingenuous to come at flat earthers and try and like to mock them as if they should have already developed a replacement world map. That's insane, bro. Like, just you guys can believe the Earth's a globe and still be genuine at the same time, believe it or not.
It's debatable, but we'll roll with it for now.
Debatable.
Oh, I'm glad you unmuted me finally.
Well, just
Witsit,
that genuineness, I think, comes with truth. Could be argued, but yeah, no, I hear you though. I mean, you could still be intellectually honest, but the problem is that if it's not true, then at some point you couldn't maintain it without either bias or belief or something else going on.
well, I find it very interesting that Witsit claims that we're being fed this information and we're not allowed to use any other information, when it was himself who said that we weren't allowed to go to Antarctica, and look who ended up down there.
No, he
That's
never.
literally a lie. That's a lie. Why did you just lie?
I didn't lie. Flat earthers have constantly said you're not allowed to go to Antarctica and see the 24-hour sun or anything like that. But yet you guys were allowed to go down there. And that's the same context of what you just said about the Queen and the King basically saying that you cannot make maps unless you follow their empirical guidelines, which is fine. That has nothing to do with what I'm asking you guys to do as flat earthers in making a map.
Okay, I'm gonna have to respond to this. It's kind of ridiculous. But first of all, in this hypothetical scenario, that what you said wasn't just completely 100% BS, which it actually is, that wouldn't be relevant anyway. Like, the idea that I would have said we can't go to Antarctica, but we actually could and was wrong, somehow means that I'm also automatically wrong about my position regarding the map. What I just said about the maps is historical fact. Of course, I never ever said you can't go to Antarctica at all. Never said that. I've never even heard a flat earther say that at all. We all say the same thing. You can't freely and privately explore Antarctica, which is actually just a fact. And the Globers, for some reason, feel the need to lie and misrepresent what we're saying to claim that we deny you can go there, even though tons of tourists go there all the time. I'm really perplexed. Again, this kind of brings back my point. This is a perfect scenario where you could be representing the globe and still be good faith or genuine. There's really no reason required for you to lie about that. And it is a lie because you know that no flat earthers think that you literally can't go there at all.
So your complaint is that we can't make a map because we're not allowed to. You're telling me that because I have to follow the empirical system of longitude and latitude and everything else, I'm not allowed to make a map, right?
Can you acknowledge the fact that you were lying about the Antarctica thing?
No, because I've heard flat earthers say that, including, I believe, yourself, but I have to go and look now at all the videos that I've watched of you saying something like that.
Why are you lying, bro?
I'm not lying. You can say I may be mistaken with you in particular, but I do know other flat earthers who've said that.
Okay, name one. Name one.
I've heard them say that too, and I'm new to the community.
Can you name one?
You know, I'm trying to think honestly.
I believe it was Nathan that said it once. It's one of
Nathan
the
who?
Well, dude,
Well, I've heard it multiple times. I just don't remember names or faces. I'm still getting to know you all, but I remember being told
And Witsit, you can go ahead and run away from this one. That point is fine. But the point I'm trying to make at is you are allowed to make a map, and you can make it out of any coordinate system you like, and then publish it.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to criticize it if you don't follow, say, for instance, latitude and longitude. But I was going to point out that you can find north without a compass. By the way, you don't need to worry about magnetic declination. You basically just need to know what time of day it is.
We're not going to do this. We're actually going to acknowledge what you're misrepresenting. So, Nathan never said that. So if you're talking about Nathan Oakley, let's use like what McToon just did, for example. McToon, while we were in Antarctica, and this is important because it may sound like I'm being petty. I'm not, though, because this is what we deal with on a meta scale. This just elucidates the problem in this discussion. While we can't just have good faith, productive, fruitful conversations, when I talk to people that believe there's a globe in real life, such as Mark that works with Candace, this is not the way that they have conversations, and it's really kind of disappointing that you guys feel the need to do it. So let's just use this as a learning tool. I'll try to be quick. So when we were in Antarctica, which is beautiful and serene and largely untouched by people, so very quiet, I walk back into our room and I hear McToon just yelling on the phone. I'm like, what is going on? Someone tells me he's talking to Nathan Oakley. I'm like, oh man. He goes outside, he's just continually screaming, yelling into Antarctica. You lied, Nathan. You're a liar. You lied. Tell everyone that you lied. You said I couldn't go here. I'd be turned away with guns. Right? Just screaming in Antarctica to a phone. Okay. Now, what actually happened was like 8 years ago or something, and the context of being able to freely and privately explore Antarctica and figure out what's going on there, or trying to potentially circumnavigate going over it. He said, you're not allowed to freely go there. You're not allowed to freely and private. The fact I'm having to defend Oakley right now tells you all you need to know. That you have to freely and privately go there. If you attempted to do that without permission, you'd be turned away with guns. That's what he actually said. And then what does McToon say? I proved you were lying because we're here on an approved guided tour, an approved location, and I wasn't turned away with guns. And I heard McToon tell many of the employees that while I was there, someone was fixing our food and he was like, telling them about flat earth. He's like, yeah, I mean, they think you can't come here at all. And that's what you're doing. You just claimed you've heard tons of flat earthers say that. You haven't. Oakley didn't say that. Flat earthers don't say that. Flat earthers have known that there are many approved guided tours. There are tourist attractions and locations that you're allowed to go. And that is not in any way the point. That's completely irrelevant. So it shows that it's just bad
kind of
faith
is the
for you.
point.
How is it the
Dude,
point?
the fact that it's
Well, let
even
me
brought up
explain
in
that.
this context is like 2015 all over again.
Yeah.
The
Let
fact
me
that
explain
it's
it to you
even
this
brought
way.
up is so remedial and old.
If you had a boat, if you legally had a boat and you had enough of money and you could make a trip south, you could land anywhere along the South American coast or Antarctic coast, and you will have no problem landing. The problem is surviving there, which is why they try to get you to follow the regulations and go through the proper permits and so forth, so they keep an eye on you and you don't kill yourself. And you know that because they told you that when you got down there.
Okay,
But
that
you
is not
can
true
do
at
that.
all. That is not true at all. I talked to the girl that runs ALE, one of only 3 companies approved to take tourist groups in Antarctica on like expeditions and stuff like what we did, where we went. Only 3 companies in all the world are allowed to do that are approved to do that in Antarctica. 3 companies. And I talked to the girl that is currently in charge and has been for years of putting together all of the expeditions and trips and experiences and journeys through their company. And she specifically said, like we all know, what you just said isn't true at all. You are not allowed to go to Antarctica at all without a permit. At all. You are not allowed to go at all. And yes,
And what
they
do you
say it's
think would
because,
happen?
yes. Oh, so instead of acknowledging that you just were wrong and or lying, you're just going to.
I'm not going to take her word for it. I'm going to take the word of the actual document itself that sets down the rules and regulations. Okay. The reason why it's there is to protect not only the scientists doing the research there, so you don't have some Yahoo just showing up and mucking up research, but it also protects you from going to a continent that is so hostile you're going to end up dying, and no one's going to want to spend the money to go look for you, which is the real big problem. You know, once you announce you're going to go down there and you end up getting yourself killed, they're going to still have to try to bring you back because there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to do so. And that's a lot of money and expense. Same thing. The Southern Ocean is very hostile. Yeah, absolutely.
So
how many
what's the
fools go
difference?
down there and navigate that ocean just to prove the ocean's there?
And
Not
they
too many.
die. Yeah, there's a few that die, haven't they?
Exactly, but there's no regulation saying you can't do it.
Oh, but why
Thanks
is the
for making
regulation
our
for?
point. Thanks for making our point.
And
This is
there's no
what's so funny.
regulation that says you can't do it. They're telling you not to do it so that if you follow the regulations, they can help you stay alive. That's
That's
the
not
whole
true.
point.
It's not true. There are regulations that say you can't do it, and the specific subsequent legislation that elucidates this or specifies this is pertinent to each country, right? So it's based on the specific country you're in that's adhering to the Antarctic Treaty, but there's also international organizations that also implement subsequent legislation for anyone going to Antarctica, and all of the signatories or whatever, signatees, I forgot the word, signatories, they have all agreed that that international organization represent that purpose. Okay. I just talked to the girl for 30 minutes, asking her all of these questions. You have no idea what you're talking about. You are
One
not allowed.
anecdotal person doesn't count. You would do that to me if I did that as a glober saying that I had this one person for evidence. You'd say that's bullshit. And that's what I'm trying to say. I don't think she knows what she's talking about. I think you talked to the wrong person. I really think that you ought to look into the law and see if you can't actually take your own boat, go to land in Antarctica somewhere. And if you wanted to be stupid enough to go find the South Pole yourself, you could actually do it. The problem is no one's going to come up there and walk up and shoot you or stop you from doing it. They're going to wonder why you're doing it. They're going to say you're crazy, and that'll be the end of it.
Wow, this dude is now saying that the girl that's in charge of one of only 3 companies that actually are
Yes, I am.
allowed and get. It's hilarious. And now you don't even need that girl. You can just go read it. You have to get permits to do it. In fact, I've even inquired about it. If I wanted to bring 10 people to try to privately and freely explore Antarctica, what would I need to do? Right? And they said, first thing you need to do is you need to turn in this environmental permit application. It ranges anywhere from $250,000 to $1 million. And there's no guarantee you're going to get approved, but there is no refund regardless of if you get approved or not. That's one of multiple permits that you have to do. You then have to give them your specific route that you're going to undergo, and then they have to approve the route or make alterations to it. Just a second.
Show
Go ahead,
me a
acknowledge that.
single country. Show me a single
I've heard
country
that, dude.
who
I've
has
heard that.
placed anybody and any arms in South America to prevent, or in Antarctica, to prevent you from actually going and landing on your own and attempting to find the South Pole. You're not going to run into any armed penguins. You're not going to run into any armed men or people that are trying to enforce that rule. They put those rules down there so that when you do go down there, you have the proper people and support to keep you from dying. But if you want to, with
How would
your
you
own
hold
group,
on, bro? Just relax.
go ahead.
Why is this allowed?
Yeah, it's really
Because I'm
not. So
old
what
and I
you
have
want to
trouble hearing.
All right.
Thank you
Well,
for appreciating my deafness.
Armed penguins, bro. They all say that, knowing it's just ridiculous.
I know it's a meme, and I didn't mean
No,
to
it's
use
a
the meme.
script.
But how do you
You're-
know? My question
Like you
for
never
you is
use a script.
my question for you is how do you know? Because I know you don't know, because I know you've never gone to do it. So it's just like how you're saying you know this how?
I don't have a desire to go see the South Pole, but you know what? I'm also not standing around saying it doesn't exist, and
We're
I'm not
asking you
calling it a.
how, dude. The
Nobody
question
said
was,
it.
how do you know?
How do you know what's there if you just freely took your own boat to Antarctica and just started
Oh,
getting
no.
up on the
People
ice
have
and playing
flown
around?
over. People have flown over Antarctica. I don't need to know that. That's not the point. The point is you're the ones who are trying to prove it doesn't exist. And I'm saying, why don't you make a map of it? Why don't you make a map of all the other continents? Why aren't you just giving us an example of what the flat Earth looks like? And you're avoiding it like you just did now when you segued on this long trip about whether or not you can go to South Antarctica or not. So again, you're still avoiding the question of why you don't have a map.
Question.
No,
How do
see, this is
you know?
yeah. The obvious thing to do right now
Yeah,
is just to admit that
move
what
on
you're
from
saying
this guy?
wasn't. Just
I'm
admit
not
that
gonna.
what you
No,
said isn't true, and that
it's
you're
not.
just
It's
repeating
true.
a script. See, this is what I'm saying. I try to tell Globers this. If you truly believe the Earth's a globe, the way that you guys almost uniformly behave is the number one thing that has blown flat Earth up, has turned so many people on the flat Earth, has made so many people decide, you know what, dang it, I'm gonna have to go look into this, because they can't find anybody in these debates that defend the globe and do so honestly or in good faith. They all have a script that they all repeat, and that script misrepresents what the flat earthers actually say. It strawmans them, it gaslights them, it mocks them, it attempts to humiliate them, and it isn't true. And I'm so perplexed how a grown man can sit here and think that it's okay to do that. And we're telling you right now, first you claim that I've said it, and then I went there. That's not true. It just sounds good in your little group to be like, haha, Witsit said you can't go to Antarctica, and he just went there, haha. But that's not real. I knew I would be able to go there to a little approved place. I have people in my family that have gone there.
Get first-hand account of what a captain has to do to go to somewhere like that, or anywhere basically. When you leave your home port, which means where your boat is registered, those ports where you're registered, there's a reason you have to register your boat. I'm registered in a state in the United States, but once I go into international waters, I have to obey certain laws. And when you go into another port, even if it's in the United States, you have to fly your flag. You have to follow certain rules. If you go to a place like Antarctica, when we checked into it as a pilot or as a captain, you have certain rules, of course, that you have to follow. And you would have to leave whatever port you're registered in. You could go to different ports, but then whatever port you left from that you're registered in, you have to abide by those rules. You would have to check in. You would have to go into port in a port in Antarctica and let them know what you're doing there, what's going on, how much fuel you have, how many souls you have on board, whether you're a boat or a plane. This guy has no idea what he's talking about. He's just following the script. It's weird. I don't know why I don't know why you give him time, but if you do, why it's allowed to carry on so long. So we checked in as a pilot. Can you fly there? And as a captain, can you bring your boat there? And there are definite rules. It's almost near impossible, but like they do, once you get the permits, if you're willing to go through that process, you can definitely fly and boat there.
Well, the thing is, dude, we've known about those trips for a long time. I've known about them for years. Like that ALE website. I mean, we've looked into them in the past. Like even way back, like on like the 24/7 Flat Earth server back in the early days when we were all on there. It used to come up all the time, and we'd be like, yeah, there are these trips that cost like $30,000, $40,000. But we just like at the time hadn't really known anyone who actually took one of those trips. And at that time, looking back on it, now knowing more of the history of ALE, there probably were not as many even happening back then, let alone anyone like in the community or somebody that could be, referenced directly, but then now in the last couple of years, there's a lot more footage and videos and stuff, from there. So. But yeah, I mean, we've known about those trips. I mean, that there are those like $30,000 trips you can take, but it's not like that's new information that you can go and of course you can take the cruises there and then the places to pet penguins and all that. So that's been discussed from day one. So yeah, I mean the idea of even saying that just seems completely inaccurate. That's why I was joking before. I said it's like 2015 because it's like I feel like those are like the arguments that like we would be going through on like in those early days that were not even accurate and were not even being said. And somehow like 10 years later, it's still being strawmanned.
Well, why aren't we getting along with my question I originally asked to Witsit right from the get-go? When I said it would be easy to make a map, why haven't you guys done that?
You think it would be easy to make a map of what? Wouldn't even be easy to make a map of my state.
Same reason you haven't. Same reason you haven't. It's a massive project, and we're all busy living our lives. Same reason you have.
Actually, I've made a lot of maps, and I made a lot of maps of, now granted, these maps were out in the jungle and out in, remote areas where I was doing research. But the point that I'm saying is to make a map, it's not that difficult. And to make a map of the world with as many people as you have in your community, which should be relatively easy to make a map of one continent, let alone all of them.
Please post your map. I want to see this map. Go ahead and post it.
One continent, let alone all of them.
Yeah, did you hear that? Just post your map. I want to learn how to go do research in an area and make a map of a continent. Go ahead and post
You've
yours.
never laid down a grid before.
That's
Wait,
all right.
hey, I
Let's
wanna.
just start with yours. Post your map.
No, that is totally irrelevant from the conversation.
Okay,
Number one,
you're not
and
going to
my
post
map.
it.
No, my map's on a research
You don't
paper,
want
and
to teach us.
I'm not doxing myself just so you can be satisfied I've made a map.
You don't have to post your name and your address on the map. Just post the map, man. Take a screenshot. Surely you got it on your phone.
That map is not on my phone.
You
Have the
didn't
map
hear
you
what
made while doing your research anywhere that you can get it? That's ridiculous.
you didn't hear the part where he said that his map is published, and so if he shows you his map, he doxes himself. Did you ignore that part intentionally?
Yeah, he did.
Dude, we gotta just get back to that. We gotta get back to the topic, dude. He's talking. Let's just move on. Honestly, GreatAngelo, you're kind of just trolling us, to be honest. So can we just have like a more elevated conversation in general? So like, where are we at? You're just harassing people about maps. Yeah, dude, you don't have a map either. None of us have a map because it's a massive project to independently map the entire Earth. Many of us have not even been to all the continents, let alone even mapping one continent, let alone many, many others, let alone thousands and thousands of miles of oceans in the middle of the world. So wherever all the oceans out there as well. So that's just
Well, there is
obvious.
a map.
And from the perspective that
Geo.
right from the perspective that the globe model we're given is false, why would you expect anyone would have the correct map when all of us, quote unquote civilians have been deceived about the world that we live in?
Well, Gio, that's where you're wrong. And there is a map. It's the globe map, but you won't accept that. And my question to you is, why won't you accept a map of your own? You haven't produced one. At least we produced a map. And if you're arguing against our map, fine. I don't care whether you believe our map or not. All I care about is
You
if you're
didn't
going to claim
produce
the Earth's flat,
anything.
how hard is it to make a map?
You didn't produce anything. We produced a map, our map. You didn't do anything. That's just as much our
If you're
map
talking about
as it
me
is
personally,
yours. That's just as much our map as it is yours. You did nothing. And then you're saying, why don't you guys actually go do what I didn't do, but I keep claiming I did in this indirect way by saying that I did it. Why don't you do it?
no, I as the group of people who are basically rational thinkers and decided we needed a map in order to navigate the Earth, basically figured out the Earth was a globe and then made a map that wraps around that globe and fits really
You didn't
nicely
do any
with
of that.
no, not me personally, and neither did I, invent what you call it, penicillin, but I still
Hey,
use it. Come on, that's stupid.
Angelo. Hey, can I just ask,
Go
since you're a
ahead.
rational person, I'm good faith question. This is an actual good faith question I'm asking you from one man to another. Angelo, since you are a rational man, how do I measure distances over water? Long distances where there's no land. How do I measure over water?
Depends on how deep the water is. You can actually go through through the surface or
Well, I
the,
mean, it would
the
be an
bottom.
ocean, right? Right.
Yeah.
I'm measuring from ocean to ocean. Like I'm going to be measuring from one coastline to the next. So, without using the globe model at all, if I'm just going out there and I've got like a compass and maybe some lasers and maybe some tape measures, how do I measure over water?
If you're measuring over long distances of water like the Pacific and going, say, from South America to Australia, it's very difficult to get an accurate down to the inch measurement without using other tools such as GPS and so forth, which you don't believe in. However,
Hey,
Australia
don't say that I
is
don't believe
close
in it.
enough.
I'm saying
Well,
I didn't say I
okay,
didn't
that
believe
they
in it.
don't believe in it.
Well,
Okay,
I'm just saying that like I can't use those things because
right, right. I agree. I agree. Okay, that I don't have a problem with. But Australia is close enough to Indonesia, which is close enough to Southeast Asia, which is the part of the major continent of Asia. All of those can be measured very accurately and get a position of where Australia is in relationship to Asia, which is in relationship to North America, very close and can be given a position also. So you can now then figure out the distance between South America and Australia based on that
I,
positioning alone.
that's all good. And I don't mean to cut you off. I'm really not trying to be rude. I'm
That's
just
okay.
asking, but how do I measure over water? Because like you're telling me that, yeah, once I do measure over water from Australia to Indonesia, it'll be easy. But how do I do that? How do I do that and know that I'm doing it that accurately? Right?
Actually, parts of Indonesia are within line of sight of Australia. And so you should be able to see it from a high point, vantage point, and measure the distance using lasers or whatever. But that's not that difficult. You can also travel by boat across and figure out through nautical miles how close well, the island continent and the island of Indonesia is.
It's hard to sail a boat in a straight line. You got the tides, tossing you back and forth.
We're not in a sail
Pretty much
ship or a rowboat. We're in a very large ship that doesn't have any problems with tides.
I mean, even that,
Would
it's
you-
not sailing in a perfectly straight line.
Say that again. You're in a large
how
ship
accurate do
that
you want to get?
doesn't
Within a half
pay
a mile, would
attention
that
to
be good
tides.
enough?
What kind of fool are you? Are you kidding me? Because the ship is so large that it's not affected by tides. I don't even know what one ship that is affected
How
by
many
tides.
trips
Actually,
do you think it would
but
take?
current, maybe current is what you're talking about, not tides, right? On the open ocean.
Somebody else is talking about currents. I'm not talking about that.
You
I'm talking
said
about
that big
if you make
ships aren't affected by tides and currents, basically.
right,
Like
and
they
if you
could
make
sail
that
in this.
measurement, if you make
Oh
that
my
measurement
God,
enough
bro.
times, if you make that measurement enough times,
I
you're
don't
going to
know
get
why
an
we
accurate
allow
measurement.
trolls to do this.
That's not a troll. And
How do
Gio's
you
known me
say
for
that a
years. I
ship?
don't come in here to troll.
How do you say that ships aren't affected by currents? Basically, is what you're meaning. To
They
say.
are affected minorly by currents, and they make adjustments based on that. But if
Then
you go
why'd you
back
say
and
they're not
forth,
affected?
I
We're not
didn't.
talking about. We're not talking about. Hang on, let me quote
Who's
you.
trolling who here now?
I'm going to quote you. I don't care if you call it troll. We're
That's
not talking
trolling.
about a small boat here. We're talking about a large ship that's not affected by tides. What's your exact quote?
Well,
If you have a large
I just
ship
hopped
going
in here
back
and
and
made one
forth
comment.
between
It
two
caused a lot of
ports,
drama already.
if you have a ship going between two ports, two known ports on two different islands, Indonesia and Australia, enough times you'll get enough measurements through the amount of time it takes that ship to traverse that to get a pretty accurate measurement of what the distance is between the two. Because you'll have so much data, you'll have so much data, you'll get an accurate distance.
Time and
You do
speed,
that.
buddy, is how you measure. If he would have answered first off, time and speed. So he said not, so that he's kind of answering, but how you measure long distance over water is time it takes you and what speed you're doing. You calculate it.
Exactly. And you do it enough times, you're going to get
really?
an accurate measurement. So what does that have to do with whether or not I was right or not? You finally know the distances and where these continents are. You now have a map. And I'm asking you, how come on the flat earth examples of everything I've ever seen from flat earthers, I've never seen a real map?
You mean the ones that don't believe in GBS? I mean, how many wrong statements have you made in the last 10 minutes, bro?
What does that
You
have
wanna-
to do with whether or not
Hey guys,
you guys
sound
come up with a
ignorant.
map?
Hey
You
guys.
sound ignorant while we're trying to listen to the rest of your questions or even allowing you to question us. When you say things like that, you're obviously here just to cause like crap.
Oh, I think you're running away from the question.
Yeah,
Well,
we
the
run
law-
away, right? That's why we're here
the-
for 8 years talking about every topic under the sun. The
And never
24-hour sun,
talking
by the
about
way.
your own map. Never once have you talked
You're
about your
never
own map.
talking about curved water. The
Gentlemen,
difference.
if I may, I've just been notified that we have an event scheduled. It's apparently a debate between Elijah Seraphim and Jesse. I'm not sure if you want
When
to
does that
continue
start?
this discussion. It was supposed to start half an hour ago, so I'm not sure.
Oh,
Let me step
shit.
out.
All right.
We're half an hour behind schedule. Let's get it rolling.
Yeah. Let's get it happening.
All right. Do I sound good? Got a good mic check?
Hey, Gio, good seeing you again. Take care.
Yeah, good.
Crystal clear.